to be able to put in a licensing scheme, we need to be able to demonstrate, right, that there is an issue, there is a problem. So the report was commissioned, and that data, that information that's been provided, what was the basis of what we have said to the Secretary of State that we need to bring in order to tackle some of the issues that people are talking about here today. Now, when you start talking about the council sitting on a gold mine of 500 million, okay, that's all theoretical, okay, right, okay. You also have to bear in mind, okay,
Very important.
when anyone is fined, or when we go through a process of taking anyone to court or going through a process of holding them to account, we need to be able to demonstrate the situation, how long it's been there, the impact and everything else. And we also have to be proportionate in our response, because we can also be challenged as well. It's not just a one-way thing of us tackling the landlord and saying to the landlord, we're going to take you to court, we're going to fine you for everything else. If we don't have the evidence base and the proof that we need in order to demonstrate the situation that people are in, just finding people £30,000 from the onset, we wouldn't be allowed to do that. We will also have to go through our own systems and policies, and we do have the point system, that allows us to say this is the highest category, the lowest category, and everything else.
We do understand that there are processional difficulties surrounding that.
Absolutely.
But it still doesn't, if you look at the last 5 years in terms of what the council has done, in the last 5 years, the number of civil penalty notices that the council has issued no way matches the number of dangerous properties that has come up. So there is obviously a lack there that needs.
I wouldn't say lack. The way you presented it, I mean, obviously, look. If you want me to respond back, I've got no problem responding back, right? But I don't want to get into a confrontation. Okay, we're here to talk about how we can actually sort of take the opportunity we have here. Now, it is a difficult situation. We have tried twice already in order to get the licenses. Okay.
So it might just be worth setting the context, and thank you for the stories that were shared, and thank you, Miriam, for your story as well, and for putting a very personal sort of angle to the conversations around figures and data that we are having here. But it's important to set the context. So it's important to note that in total here in Brent, we have over 10,329 properties licensed. That is, and considering that we have 58,000 privately rented properties in Brent, that means that almost 20% of all privately rented properties here in Brent have some form of licensing in them. As you know, we have a range of licensing schemes, selective, HMO, mandatory, etc. It's also important to understand that we have more HMOs licensed than any other London borough. So to say that we are not proactive in our approach is slightly challenging, because actually we will not have all of this, achieve all of this if we did not take a proactive approach. Secondly, you said that we do not have targets for Destination 2. That's not entirely correct. So in order to put forward the application to the Secretary of State, we have to, one, demonstrate the needs, hence the 10,000 figure that you mentioned in your presentation, but also we have to be very conservative and reserved in terms of our targets for Designation 2, because the assumption is that we may not get it. We do not want to be presumptuous about getting a Designation 2, because it's the Secretary of State's decision. It is outside of our remit. So we cannot plan or dedicate resources to demonstrate that we would be in a position of getting Designation 2, because it has an implication on our application. But we do have plans for Designation 2, and if we are successful with Designation 2, we'd like to double the number of compliance officers. As I mentioned, we've recruited another 8, so we're up to 12. We want to double that. we want to undertake compliance inspection in about 50% of licenses issued over the lifetime of the scheme. So that is a total of compliance inspections of about 20,000 over the lifeline of the scheme, which is about 5 years. So we do have plans, but as Leader has mentioned, there are processes in place, and I understand I used to be an organiser, I used to organise for London citizens. Bureaucracy is frustrating, and it's frustrating for us as well, because there are certain processes by which we have to also comply. So please be reassured that we do have plans in place. And I think my ask to you and to all of you is help us. You know, the decision to license, to introduce selective licensing in all of Brent should not be taken away from us. We have to go to central government in order to get permission to do that. But we want your help to campaign to ensure that that decision is a bottom-up decision and not a top-down approach.
And that is what the London Renters Union has been doing on a national level, saying that things shouldn't have to go to central government. On a local level, ensuring that many people here, you know, signed the consultation saying we want that licensing. I think we're veering between a conversation about finances and a conversation about designation 2. I think let's talk about designation 2 right now, and then we can get on to the financing. Even if you feel like there are some, quite hopeful figures here, we've also shown some.
We can't be concrete. You know, it puts our application in jeopardy. So I hope you do appreciate that as well.
Well, I mean, I would say that on designation 1, you have a plan,
yes,
which has 5 different columns, and it has targets for compliance inspections, just as you said for designation 2, and it has targets for reducing category 1 hazards. If you look at the plan for designation 2, it has all of those other targets you've just mentioned, so you're absolutely correct. It's not true to say it has no targets. What it has no targets for is the Council's overall objective, which is reducing category 1 hazards, which is the main issue that, you know, what our members, as you can see, are some of the people who are most affected by this, in some of the worst properties in the area. And that's why we're not saying to you, look, we think you have to go knock on every single door across the borough. We're saying we want a targeted approach that is dealing with the worst issues.
So that's
and so I think Istar's question.
It's hazards, not homes. Is that the ask? Focusing on hazards and not just the amount of homes that they're inspecting.
And safe homes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is to deal with the unsafe homes, isn't it?
It is great to see our leader really cares about this. But what type of proportion does he think should be targeted, especially in the unsafe homes, like within the designation 1?
Of like dealt with, unsafe homes remain safe, I guess. Sorry, across the borough, I think we were talking about.
But personally, I mean, look, we can have a target of 50%, we can have a target of 30%, we can have a target of 80%. Regardless of that, okay, I think if I live in an ideal world, right, where I had the resources and the opportunities to do everything that I could, and you mentioned about local government having the power and the authority to do it, right? I would want every home to be safe. Every home, whether it's 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, every home should be a safe home. Because from my personal experience and what I'm confident, and looking at this room here today.
But do you think that's going to happen if the council doesn't have clear targets for how many homes it's going to make safe? Because right now, we know that there's 10,000 that are unsafe. We know it's having a huge knock-on impact. And in terms of, you may say, right, we cannot deal with every one of those properties. Fair enough, that's understandable. It is what people signed a petition demanding, because it's what people want and what they need. But we recognise that there's limitations to what you should do as well. But let's take the figures you've just said. You're going to, across the entire borough, we're going to inspect, you're going to inspect half of the properties, was the 20,000.
Over the lifeline of the license.
Yeah, over 5 years, right? You're also going to have 5,500, I think, requests for service, people who, they didn't get an inspection, but nonetheless they've got an issue and they say, hey, we need some support, and I'm sure that you're committed to making sure that every time someone communicates an issue to the council and you know about it, it would be dealt with. So 50% would seem quite low, right? You're already visiting half of them, you're getting other people coming to you saying, we've also got a problem. We feel like something like 75% of those homes, not of all the homes that are unsafe across this 5-year period, but at least at the ones that exist at the beginning of the scheme. Like, we're probably looking at 20,000 properties over 5 years.
Sorry if I may, if, as you rightly highlighted, there are 10,000 properties that you pulled out from our report that has category 1 hazard. We've committed to, if we get designation 2, to inspect 20,000. So I don't actually understand the ask.
The ask is not just about inspecting, it's about, as you have for designation 1, you have targets for how many hazards you're going to deal with. What are those targets for designation 2?
What I would say, Jake, obviously, if you're asking me to say that the slide is well about, I'm not going to be.
Could you come back to us in 2 months by saying this is what our plan is and this is how many we hope to do?
Can you give us until we get the decision from the Secretary of State? Because that's during December, right? Until I get that designation, I don't have that certainty about whether it's going to go ahead or not. I
You
don't
can still
have
plan, I'd say, but that seems fine. Let's
Yeah,
agree that
I
by
need that
December
certainty. I need
we'll
that
try and
certainty.
get a clearer plan of actually how many homes are going to be made safe and how many hazards will be dealt with
Based on
through
the Secretary of
designation
State
2 to get it as close to those figures that we're asking for as
I
possible. Which
don't
I'm sure
think
is
we're
going
too far away, honestly, right, from your figure and the figures, right, that we're probably looking at internally.
That sounds great. Should we move on?
Yeah, I'm sorry guys, we will have someone up at the end of it and there will be more. I want to make sure that everyone that's here ready to speak, because we're getting short time, has the opportunity to speak. So Jack is going to talk to you now. Yeah?
So we've talked about how you don't have the licensing scheme yet for the borough-wide, and it's very difficult for you to set targets. You don't have this application that's gone through yet, but you already have the powers in designation 1. This is an active licensing scheme now. Came in this year, and it's for the 3 wards of Harlesden and Kensal Green, Wilson Green, and Dollis Hill, where many of our members are concentrated, and also many people in the room here today are from. So, as we presented, and from your own research, there's around 2,400 unsafe homes in this designation. As we presented, bar graph is just there. Your current targets will only deal with around 1,200 of these unsafe homes. This is despite this scheme giving licences, or aiming to give licences to 100% of these properties. No? So, in your current approach, the licence scheme will give every property a licence, but in effect be comfortable with leaving half of these homes with life-threatening health conditions. Now, we really recognise that the council has better policy on housing than most councils in London, but this is a licensing scheme, if pertaining to the original aims of the licensing scheme, which is to improve housing conditions, that our members are uncomfortable with, and we hope that you will be uncomfortable with as well. So we really think that what we want to work with you today on is a more ambitious and complete plan for designation 1, which you already have the powers to commit targets to. And we really think we can frame this in an excellent way. We think this can be a pilot for a new approach, for what can basically be a housing and health project that deals with all 2,400 of the unsafe homes rather than only half of them. And this could really set a benchmark for other authorities, right? Because as the LRU more broadly, we're meeting with the GLA, we're meeting with Labour Party, we're meeting with the Department of Levelling Up, and we want to go to them and say, Brent is really leading the way in terms of really effective and meaningful licensing schemes. And we believe, we've talked a bit about more creative ways of financing these schemes. We believe that you can generate the capacity for this. You said you were hiring more officers this year. This is even prior to the licensing scheme potentially coming in next year. And we also think there's loads of scope of ways just outside of gathering more cash. For example, we're meeting with the head of children's services for NHS North West London literally next Tuesday. We think there's opportunity for scope using admissions data here, but also in this designation, we're really well organised, right? And I think we can use LRU's reach to try and find and report a lot of these hazards. So what we kind of want to ask you today really is, given that your current targets aren't really sufficient for actually doing what a licensing scheme says it will do, and well, the many people in this room here with unsafe homes, will you commit to improving targets and aiming with the powers that you currently already have to dealing with all 2,400 of these unsafe homes in designation 1?
So thank you, Jack. With, as you said, with our current target and our current powers, we will be best placed to commit to working with you on piloting an approach to ensure that all other 2,000 or outstanding properties are inspected. As I said, we'll have 8 additional compliance officers in place by next month. We've projected that will give us capacity in terms of additional 4,000 plus inspections per year. So with that current plan in place, we hope to target these properties that are outstanding. But we
Over the course of the 5-year scheme, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So the projections that we have at the moment is additional 4,000 inspections per year. So over the lifeline scheme, we will more than target some of the outstanding figures that you've mentioned. But just so that we are clear, I particularly love pilots and new approaches, so we are happy to work with you on your proposal, and that's because that is based on the current commitment, which is within our power.
Okay, so you think that going forward you can commit to improving targets on this designation and try and target 2,400 of these properties over the course of the lifetime of the scheme?
Anything that's within our remit, we can commit to. We can try to do better and improve.
Just on that, honestly, I've intimated like that now. I would like to have all these checks and statements. One of the issues, obviously, is the recruitment issues. And we've managed to recruit a trial. We've been trying so long, right? I keep thinking about it again after 2 years.
There's been shortages within the sector.
To get to this point where we have 8 individuals. What we're also now looking at, right, is creating sort of apprenticeship schemes, right, where we can have trainees sort of coming through. Yeah, right. So, because honestly, right, trying to find people, right, who can train up the skills, the knowledge and everything else, right, is so difficult out there. And that's one of the, as more and more councils, right, applying for licensing schemes, right, we're competing with the same scarce resources as well, and it's becoming harder.
I appreciate this, but the kind of point of this section was we kind of wanted to get a commitment around improving targets on this designation, and we're happy with this.
Yeah, sounds brilliant, but we're going to try and get those targets up a bit to make sure that in this area, where a lot of our members are living, we're getting more homes, dealt with and saved. That's brilliant. Shall we go quickly just back to the finances before we talk a little bit about process?
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about fine examples, and I'm going to start with a question of principle, and I think we'll all appreciate a yes or no answer. If you can, yeah. So, do you agree that increasing fines is good for increasing the council's income, and therefore there should be a move towards increasing fines by the council?
I wish you were saying yes. No, absolutely. I think we should be looking at increasing fines, and I absolutely agree with that as well. Okay, but look, right? It's no different, right, to any other fine that's applied in the council to anything else that happens in it. It has to be taken on the right policies, the principles, and everything else. And it has to be proportionate in relation to the offence that's being caused. And yes, the worse the offence, the higher the fine. There are other factors that go into it, right? But generally, I do agree with that principle.
Okay, so does that mean that can you commit to setting targets on the number of fines that the council will issue?
The thing with that is, right, is that landlords and everything else, I could be challenging that and saying like that I'm going to go out there that regardless of what type of issue we find, we're going to fine individuals. I think that's more like being predetermination for me in the council, right? And it would feel a bit wrong for me to set out those kind of targets. What I would commit to, right, is that where we do find contraventions, right, obviously at the lower end of the spectrum, well, we do need to give the landlords the opportunity to fix, repair, and amend. Okay, right. If that went to court, it would go against, absolutely go against us. Where those hazards are, the worst type of hazards, right? Yes, right. I will task police and the team, right, to make sure that every single one of those individuals is held to account, right? And if it means finding them or banning orders and everything else, right, and using the powers and the resources we have, yes.
So, just a rhetorical question for a catering purpose, I'll ask everyone here, I'll ask our members, is there anyone here who knows that the landlord has been fined?
But I don't know, I could not tell you, right, what the hazards are.
They could, if we had enough time, I think they would. And I guess rest assured that some of them, there is, a lot of them are serious, and something that perhaps makes total sense if you feel like, actually, we've got to be flexible with what kind of issue it is. But you can have targets for, well, when this is a serious issue of this form, we want to ensure that fines are happening. And say, fine, we're not going to do that for things where it's a minor contravention because it's not going to fly, that's fine. But there are a lot of serious contraventions. We see them every day, and not many of them are coming to the tribunal for a fine.
One quick point, right? If, as a council, if we issue the fixed penalty notice as such, right, then we get the money, right? If it goes to court, okay, right, we don't get any money. Right, so almost £2 million has been taken by the courts and the Treasury, because when we've taken them to court
that's why we're talking about fines, not court action, to be honest, and it's a lot quicker, and I think we all agree, and it's good to see that Brent is doing more than some, but I mean...
Yeah, like...
The commitment is there, where we know those individuals are in that hazard, honestly, assumption, right? I would love to sort of throw as many fines as I can out there, right? But I just need, there are processes I do need to follow.
Well, our point is that if you're not focusing on fines, then you're not really providing any incentive for your own officers. And in the last 5 years, by issuing 270, you only issued 270 civil penalty notices and brought in £900,000.
That's been 4 million songs.
And you're increasing your staff, right?
Yeah.
And what's to say that the only thing it is logical to incentivize your own officers to find more bad landlords. Like there is.
It's true, because that's how the parking permits,
not one parking permit, not one company in Brent is incentivized. 100%, no incentivization.
Let's think about incentivization means a lot of things, right? If we think about targets, maybe what we know is that your officers, with not very many of them, have brought in almost £1 million, right? What we also know is that your scheme here that we're talking about that already exists has a budget of £6.4 million, and that is because it's a £640 licence fee, and you think you're going to license 10,000 properties. Now, why is potential income from fines not part of that budget? Because if it's part of that, but the point of fines is to increase the possible enforcement action, right? That's why the government brought the legislation in, that's why we pushed them to do it. You are bringing in that income, and you're doing it fairly successfully, I would say, compared to some boroughs, but you're not putting it into the scheme to say we can use that money to hire more people. So will you commit to including the income from fines in the budgets for these licensing schemes? Because right now they're not in there.
No, and I don't understand exactly what you're saying, right? But the thing is, right, in order for me to take those fines and everything else forward, right, I need to pay for a resource, right, in order to sort of give me the evidence and everything else, right, and do all the illustration.
Yeah, if you want to front load it.
Exactly, right. So I mean, look, right, the point you made, I said, right, look, in relation to how the license fee being £640 and the average being 700. Okay, it doesn't mean, right, that we should be, right, starting at this point of that. Right? I want to make sure, right, that we have a scheme that works for us, right. It's about how do we make sure as we go forward, right, that we change and amend the scheme, right, in the ways that we need to. So if we're starting at £640, right, I want to be able to have the opportunity to increase those license fees as we go forward as well. Right, and just make sure it's a fair system for everyone as well.
That makes sense, and we agree with that. But so, and we also understand that maybe finding bad landlords is like it's more on a case by case basis. You have to see everything around that. So, can you at least commit to us as you've committed for the rest of our demands that you come back in 2 months and you could show us that you have increased the number of fines that you're issuing.
It won't be 2 months, I'm afraid.
Not in 2 months. Not in 2 months, but like 6 months.
Look, right, we're having a conversation here today, okay? And I also need to sort of have a conversation within the council, right, with the corporate director and everybody else, right? How this fits in groups only last week, we just started the conversation, right, about the budget going forward. I have to find £18 million of cuts coming forward.
And that is not an easy job, and it is one that you've done. Is we found those places to cut, and we're glad that it's not coming from this team. I guess what we're saying is this is one of the very few areas where the council can actually generate revenue. And generate revenue from people who are making a lot of money off our backs, right? And providing a substandard service. So I guess just to be quite specific, right? I do want to just hear what your response is to including the income from fines in the scheme, because that is how the schemes were meant to be set up.
Yeah.
But the budget for your scheme is solely based on the licence fee. If you actually include the rest of that money, you could put more jobs out there. We recognise there's issues with hiring, but at least you could plan to be able to put more jobs out there. And that is what we want, so that officers are not so overstretched that they treat people badly because they don't have time. So a straight answer to that question.
I'll give you a straight answer. Honestly, look, a lot of the councillors haven't heard what I'm about to say, right? So you need to keep it amongst yourselves. One of the conversations right now I'm having with the likes of Promise and Cooper is to take into account enforcement, okay? And that means that how do I sort of put an extra capital resource in, right? That came from the manpower they need in order to go out to do the enforcement, to do the fines. Okay, but this is the conversation I need to have this week first, right? Because there will be some implications, right, in relation to if I'm bringing extra resource in to these guys, right, there will be an impact on some of the other departments, right? So I need to get the buy-in from the group in order to understand the implications of what we're talking about here first, right? And then that will be a part of the budget discussions that are taking place between now and the end of the year.
So what I'm hearing is you're personally committed to trying your best to ensure that in the draft budget that comes out in November, this is going to be the enforcement capacity is going to be expanded in order to be and that would include some of the money that you're bringing in from fines.
I need to get the commitment and take all the implications of what my capital budgets are looking like first in order to do this. If I can do it, then absolutely that conversation will take.
Okay, guys, I just want to say, we know we've run over the time. The councils have kindly given us an extra little bit of time to stay with us. So I know there might be some more conversations to be had, but I want to give Alva an opportunity for 5 minutes and again present some more so that we have the whole outlook of what we're actually asking.
Thank you again for staying a bit longer. The last thing we just wanted to bring to you briefly is issues with what's actually happening with enforcement right now. And you mentioned before that you're working to improve this, and that's really great to hear. So here are just some suggestions for how that can be done. Because we have noticed that there's a bit of divergence between what the environmental health team is currently doing and the council's own policy. And we fully understand that residents need to come forward to report issues. And we are encouraging everyone we talk to use the environmental health form to report any hazards in their homes. But if people don't find that process accessible enough, or that they find that they try it and they don't get the outcome that they want, obviously they're not going to bother with it. So the first thing we wanted to bring to your attention is about improvement notices. So as you know, when an improvement notice is served, it protects the tenant from Section 21 evictions, which means fewer households have to apply as homeless. What we've also seen is that homelessness applications happen when there are serious hazards in someone's home and they report it to the council and then nothing happens. So then it's no longer reasonable for that household to stay in the property.